Anyway, please, I guess we should be quiet. I'll tell you some other people came as big surprise. Okay, a really big showing.
Wait, I thought I was going to get the link out.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I didn't even think about that. Thank you. Okay, hands out of pockets.
Like this. I will go round. You will go round. We all go round. All together round. Saying round and round. So the world will know who we are. Let's say round. All together round. Going round and round. We'll go round. You will go round. We all go round. Yay!
Good morning. Welcome to this time and this space, to this beautiful day that we have been given. My name is the Reverend Lara Cowtan. I'm the Minister of Congregational Care here at Unity Church-Unitarian. It is a joy to be here with you. I see people are still coming in, and I'm wondering if, because we have a very full sanctuary this morning, we could invite people to scooch, a little pew etiquette scooching, there we go, to make room on the ends of the pews so that people can just come in and sit down as they arrive. And remember, the front couple of pews are safe. Yeah, they're not spitting distance at all. Please come in. Find yourself some space, make space for others. Thank you. So again, I'm Reverend Lara Cowtan. I use pronouns she and her. I'm joined on the chancel this morning by Senior Minister Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair and our worship associate, Peggy Lin, and all of these people. Whoever you are, however you have chosen to come here today, however you choose to express your identity and your love in the world, whatever burdens or joys or gifts or wounds that you carry, you are welcome here. If you're a newcomer, or here for the first time, or a recent visitor, I invite you to fill out the card that's in the back of the pew in front of you and drop that in the offering basket as it passes you by later in the service. This will help us to connect with you and help you to connect with Unity Church. We look forward to greeting you in the foyer after the service, and there's a lot going on also between the services. Welcome to those of you joining us online as well. And as you make your space in your own home sanctuary, I invite you to get a candle ready to light your chalice as we light our chalice in a moment. I have a couple program notes. The Finding Yourself at Unity session that would have been Membership 101 has been postponed due to illness. Instead, there is, for those interested, a scintillating budget overview meeting that will be held in the center room. And a reminder that next Sunday, Thanksgiving holiday weekend, there is only one worship service. It is at 10 o'clock. So people who show up at 9 will be early, and those coming for 11:15 will be late. 10 o'clock, it will be live streamed. Okay. Whoever you are, whatever you have come here seeking today, we are glad that you are here. May your spirit be nourished and renewed, and may you find here what helps you to keep and find your balance, and what inspires you to lead a loving life of integrity, service, and joy. Let us settle in now to this sacred hour together with the pealing of our bell.
A tall bare tree, a cold dark night, a fragile bird shivers in fright. One stands God in the moonlit sky, one spreads wings ready to fly. Oh, small bird, where are you bound? What do you search? Will it be found?
Our call to worship this morning is a timeless poem from Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives might be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Come, let us worship together. Let us kindle our chalice flame to illuminate this sacred hour with the unison words printed in your order of service. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith, the light of truth, and the warmth of love.
Good morning. There we go. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ahmed Anzaldua, Director of Music Ministries here. So back in 2020, we were all stuck at home, not being able to sing together. And by we, I mean, well, everyone, but the choirs at Unity. So one of the things I did that year is that I asked a wonderful composer who's part of our congregation, sitting over there, Elizabeth Alexander, to write a piece for us to sing while we were at home. So she created a setting of the prayer we use on Wellspring Wednesday, which is we give thanks for being, we give thanks for being, we give thanks for being here, we give thanks for being here together. It is printed in an insert in your programs, and the children's choir is gonna help me teach it to you. So I'm gonna sing it, they're gonna sing it, you're gonna sing it back, then we're all gonna stand up and sing it together a bunch of times. Are you ready? All right, so it starts, we give thanks for being, ready? We give thanks for being, your turn. We give thanks for being, here's the next line. We give thanks for being here, your turn. We give thanks for being here. And here's the third line, this is the longest one. Ready? We give thanks for being here together, being here together. So here's what the whole thing sounds like. Beautiful. All right, everyone stand up. We're going to sing it all together, and let's do it 3 times, and let's get faster each time, all right? 1 and 2 and... We finish by all singing together. Ready? Together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, children's choir.
Please rise and join in our responsive reading.
These are words from Clarissa Estes from her letter to a young activist during troubled times. Do not lose heart. We were made for these times.
Please don't spend your spirit dry, bewailing these hard days.
We were made for these times.
For years, we have been learning, practicing, training to meet on this plane.
I grew up on the Great Lakes and recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one.
So it is with souls that are awake.
There have never been more able vessels in the waters of the world.
We are fully provisioned and able to signal each other as never before.
We are needed now. That is all we can know.
Some in shadowy times, to be fierce and show mercy to others.
These are acts of immense bravery and great necessity.
Sometimes we sink into despair.
But we do not keep a chair for it. We do not entertain it.
We do not let it eat from our plates.
Instead, we sit down with family and friends, remembering
The one who laid the table,
the one who made this feast.
the one who gave us eyes to see. Each time we gather for worship, we set aside a moment to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. Let us take that time now to pause, take a deep breath together, shall we? Let us rest into this space as we enter our time of meditation and prayer. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the center of this and every sacred community. While we haven't received a specific request to share today, we know that there are many names that we have lifted recently who continue to be impacted by the weight of their grief over a loved one's death, over the slow recovery from a painful medical procedure, the lingering impact of a violent attack, or the massive life change following a life-threatening health scare. And there are those here too among us who are still basking in the glow of recent celebrations in their lives. I invite you to visit the congregational care table in the parish hall and leaf through the pages of names and stories that we have lifted up recently, and send your cards of care. The impact of these messages are far greater than the ink and the paper. They are gifts of spirit, of hope and love. They are grace. We stand at the side of parents and teachers and all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, with those who live with grief or chronic pain, illnesses seen and unseen, those struggling with addiction. We pray for our neighbors in prison and those who care for family members in ill health, those who struggle with loneliness, and those who strive to stay afloat amidst poverty. Our lives are blessed by those who face their final days with honesty, and by those who rise above heartbreak to challenge oppression in all of its forms. We pray for those in harm's way, for the wisdom and the strength of the leaders of the world, and for the people of this courageous congregation, as together we live into our longing to embody and help build beloved community. I invite you now to speak aloud into this space or hold in your hearts the names of those that you wish to lift into our communal embrace today. Will you join me in prayer? Holy One, Spirit of life and love and mystery, we are gathered today, all ages of our community in one place, bringing the harmony of our voices, our hearts, our hopes and our fears together for a time. We are humble witnesses to life's challenges and beauty as we learn and grow and deepen in our understanding of who we are and how we can better move in this world in the ways that love calls us to do. As we enter into this season of Thanksgiving, may we be ever mindful of the complex history and ongoing impact of oppressive colonial practices, and commit to deepening our understanding and relationship with the indigenous people of this land, for whom this is a time of mourning, and join in reflecting on meaningful healing and repair. May we learn from the wisdom and teachings of indigenous ways of knowing that speak of reciprocity and interconnectedness of all life, of all our siblings, human and non-human. And from this knowledge, may we find our way to a deeper gratitude as we give thanks for all that is our life. Let us share now a moment of silence together as we lift these intentions and your own to the source of our faith. Amen.
Family Thanksgiving Sunday is a joyful reminder and a vision of all of us, but especially our children, gathered to share food, to share love, to share our lives. Last month, on the 19th of October, the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. invited politicians and diplomats, invited journalists and chefs for a conversation entitled Breaking Bread, a conversation on gastro-diplomacy. It was an invitation for the community to come together and to share and hear stories about gathering around the table, sharing food, sharing our lives. To remember that food is much more than about sustenance, that it is about community. It is food that is a tool to bridge a deeper understanding between cultures and nations. And yes, while food has been a driver throughout human history for both war and peace, that, as one of the speakers shared, we might learn that the fork may prove more powerful than the flag. With the children who are here this morning, come on up front. Join me for the story for all ages. Good morning. You can come up a little closer. And in case the church did not know, children of all ages on any of these story or family Sundays are more than welcome up front. It was in 2018, just at the beginning of this summit, this meeting between North Korea and South Korea, that the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, for the first time, stepped over this line called the 38th parallel and gifted the president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in, with a very beloved traditional dish called naengmyeon, a cold soup noodle dish with fermented fresh vegetables on top. And for all of the people who were watching this televised, they knew the importance of naengmyeon, this very traditional dish that comes from North Korea, this traditional dish that evoked memories of a long time ago when the Korean peninsula was one nation and one people. And that this sharing of this gift of food was not just an invitation for Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in to share a meal together. It was an invitation into a relationship and the hope for the possibility of negotiation, of working out a deal for a peace plan on the Korean peninsula. In 1978, then President Jimmy Carter invited Prime Minister of Israel Menachem Begin and the President of Egypt Anwar el-Sadat to a camp in the mountains of Maryland called Camp David. And when President Carter brought these leaders of two countries that had been enemies, blood enemies of each other for a long, long time, Carter was warned by other diplomats, this was virtually impossible. You are not going to negotiate and work out a peace between these two warring states. And the people seemed like they were right. Because as soon as they started, the three cabins, the Carters were in one, Sadat was in another, the Begins in another cabin, about 100 yards away from each other. But as soon as these conversations started, the two leaders started throwing personal insults at each other, and they threatened to walk away from these negotiations. And so President Carter, after 3 or 4 days, he was by himself going back and forth between the cabins, just trying to get these leaders to talk to each other. But the First Lady, Rosalind Carter, while Jimmy Carter was doing that, Rosalind, throughout the camp, was putting cheese fondue platters here, strawberry dipped in chocolate over there, inviting all of the other junior delegates to have drinks on the patio, cakes and pies. Because Rosalind thought that if the other staff and delegates would come together and share food and drink, then maybe Sadat and Begin might also come together to share a meal. And to everyone's surprise, that's indeed what happened. After 13 really, really hard days of negotiation and working on a peace plan, after 23 revisions and drafts of a peace plan, Begin and Sadat signed the Camp David Peace Accords. With the help of President Carter, what was thought to be nearly impossible had come to be true. These are the stories that a researcher of social science called, her name was Lakshmi Bananblant, and she was interested in how food and diplomacy and negotiating peace, how these things happened. And so back in 2013, Lakshmi decided to do an experiment. With 132 graduate students in the business school, she divided them up into teams, and she told them to come together and work together to negotiate a really, really complicated deal. Lots and lots of little details that were not simple at all. When she divided the teams, she knew that the only way that all of the teams would get what they needed was if they thought about the other teams, what others wanted. Only if all of the teams could somehow think about everyone involved could each of the teams get really what they needed and what they wanted. If they fought with one another, then no one was going to get the deal that they really hoped for. And one more thing, she decided to put these teams into a conference room, into an office environment where there was no food, and then in an office room where there was food, and then even in a restaurant. What she found was profound. The teams that worked, whether it was in a restaurant or in a conference room where there was food, the teams actually were able to work on a deal that benefited all of the teams. And the people actually were happy about it. But the team that worked in the office environment without any food, they scored the lowest in terms of helping each other out. And she wondered, I wonder if it's sharing food, or maybe it's just getting people to work on something together, like doing a jigsaw puzzle together. So she did another follow-up experiment, and she had the teams take time to just relax and work on a jigsaw puzzle together to see if that would make a difference. There was something about sharing food. When they shared food together, even when they worked while they were sharing food together, it seemed like the negotiations and working on a deal vastly improved. In fact, there was even a suggestion that the way in which the food was shared, like rather than individual dishes and portions, when the teams came together to share chips and salsa, it made a difference. And so she wondered, it could be because of our biology. When there's glucose in our bodies, maybe it helps our brains to think on hard stuff better. Or, she wondered, is it that when people come together around the table to share something delicious, they start opening up to each other and communicating better? Or is it just as simple as food is something that breaks down barriers? It is something that is common to all people, whatever the culture. Lakshmi and others researchers are continuing to ask this question, but she is strongly recommending, yes, you should eat while you negotiate and do lunch together as often as you can, because it may well be that the best way into someone's mind and heart is through their stomach. I'm thinking about this as we will gather around tables to share food and to share our lives. Bless the Thanksgivings. Shall we rise and return to our seats as we continue with worship?
One of the values we say is really important in this community is generosity. That we're generous with each other, with our time and our support, caring for each other and our world in so many different ways. One of the ways that we do that is through our offering taken up each week, which we collect and then give away much of to one of our partners in the world. The recipient of our offering this morning is the Mano a Mano Community Outreach Team, which supports the social justice work of Mano a Mano International Partners, which is a local nonprofit organization here in St. Paul, founded in 1994 by Segundo and Joan Velasquez, longtime members of Unity Church-Unitarian. Since 1994, over 150 members of Unity Church have traveled to Bolivia, visiting schools, health clinics, and water projects that Mano a Mano has built in partnership with community residents. They've helped distribute medical and school supplies collected here in Minnesota, engaged with agricultural training projects. The first time I heard about Mano a Mano was over lunch with a member of the search team the first day I visited St. Paul. After the service, mano a mano will have a table in the parish hall to learn more about their work, to talk about a trip to Bolivia being planned in May of 2025, and to talk about everything else that they have done and continue to do as an expression of generosity and faith. Will the ushers now please come forward? May the work of our hands and the generosity of our hearts be given in gratitude this day. Let the offering now be taken.
The reading this morning is A Recipe for Resilience by Margaret Weiss. This recipe has been tweaked over time, so adjust as necessary. Sometimes it yields more servings than anticipated. Sometimes it needs a bit more of this ingredient or that. It comes from generations who have gone before me, and I've added my own flavor along the way. A recipe for resilience. 1 part courage, 2 parts tears of failure and doubt, 1 part deep listening, 1 part each of both silence and laughter, a dash of trust, a pinch of wonder, a heaping scoop of naps and snacks. In a separate bowl, mix together family, friends, those who challenge you to be your best self, and those with whom you disagree. Add slowly to the larger pot, add a bay leaf for, well, whatever it is bay leaves do, and let simmer for as long as you need, which is often longer than you realize or anticipate. Keep the heat at an even temperature, hot enough to cook throughout, but not so hot it burns the bottom. Can be served at room temperature, warm, or even cold if necessary. Serve alongside your favorite soft blanket, dog, cat, or other soft item. Make often, share with others. Hold on to the leftovers. You'll need them after a long day that challenges your soul.
That's a lot of choir. together. I grew up in a family that said grace before meal only on special holidays. I got caught sometimes at friends' places as my hand was reaching for the fork and it was snatched by the person next to me as someone said a few words of grace before beginning. And I always appreciated that slowing down, that connecting. But the only one that ever rolled off of my tongue when I was put on the spot to say grace when I was younger was the Johnny Appleseed song that I learned in Brownies. Anyone here know that? Oh, the Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and the apple seed. The Lord is good to me. Johnny Appleseed, amen. It works. So at Thanksgiving meals at my family, the practice was to go around the table and people would have to name something that they were thankful for, which always made me squirm as a child. The food was getting cold. And as a Unitarian Universalist, I would find that much of the language I encountered at other people's tables, the language of salvation, was less meaningful to me than the words that we did choose to use at my Unitarian Universalist table about the miraculous and labor-intensive journey from seed to table of the foods that were in front of us, and the mention of care for those who made that food along the way, and honoring their work, their sacrifice, and remembering those who are hungry as well. So maybe it took a little longer, but it was so important to center on that. Now, that said, I firmly believe that a grace before meals should be short and to the point. I typically go with a variation of one that my grandfather used, one that came straight out of the Anglican prayer book. Bless, O Lord, this food for our use, and us to thy loving service. Give us grateful hearts, and make us ever mindful of the needs of others. I tweaked that a little bit today, but it still works, and the food is still warm. So the grace that is said at the table is about things that made coming to the table happen. It's our invitation to be there. Whatever it took us to get to the table, these are the things that we are grateful for. The break in the drought that made it possible for the apples to grow. Our recovery from whatever ailment. The deep soil. The people who came to help with the harvest and the presence of loved ones who travel from a great distance. The wisdom of the native people have always taught the value of the potluck. What I have, I freely share with you. Whether that is food or presence of the soul. This is what coming to the table means. This is what breaking bread is about. Anne Lamott wrote, I do not at all understand the mystery of grace, only that it meets us where we are, but doesn't leave us where it found us. So what is grace? It's a word that defies clarity of definition, and so generates an awful lot of conversation in our discussion groups, as is part of the theme for this month, grace and liberation. Grace can refer to simple, elegant movements of a ballerina, or a thoughtful, humble response or presence. Grace comes from unexpected places. It's defined as an undeserved and unexpected gift, a blessing. It breaks into our lives with the sound of a child giggling, or a beam of sunlight coming through the clouds, or that extra 15 minutes of quiet you get just before the kids come home. These moments happen all the time if we are open to receiving them, yet undeserved, and most often unexpected. Moments like when you laugh until you cry by playing a wicked game of gin rummy with your mother, or maybe that's just me. These moments that make your heart swell and lift. Amazing grace, the song goes. How sweet the sound. It does carry us. It does save us from being lost, from feeling wretched. Grace transforms us if we let it. Max Lucado wrote, "Grace is the voice that calls us to change and then gives us the power to pull it off." Grace is in that recipe for resilience. So our job is to be open to hearing that voice and doing the work of transformation, using that transformational power of grace and sending it back out into the world. Listen for it. Tap into it. Essential energy. A blessing neither received nor given is wasted. We can't afford to waste these moments of grace. We are so quick these days to receive, I'll speak for me, to receive and transmit anxiety and anger and fear, maybe even hatred. Can we instead tune ourselves to the vibrations of grace, opening ourselves up, preparing to receive it and channel it into love, into resilience, into our recipe for resilience, giving and receiving nourishment and strength of spirit. We cannot invite or create it. That's the tricky thing. But we can pray for it. And we can pray to be open and ready for it. Open to the sounds of children laughing as a beautiful gift rather than an intrusion into the silence of our day. Open to the extra time that might be created in our schedule as a moment of grace rather than annoyance at the fact that somebody didn't show up for their appointment. Take it as a gift. Appreciating the effort that cousin made to be present, even knowing it was going to be uncomfortable. And then making space for that gift, despite divisions. We practice throughout the day, spiritual practice. We practice being open to and receiving grace. How do we give it? How do we receive it? There is a discipline for this. Make eye contact with someone and smile. An honest, open smile in the checkout line. The driver next to you at the stoplight. It may startle them. But it is grace that you are giving. Give love into the world. Notice one another. In our busy days, amidst this epidemic of loneliness, grace, that connection that we have to offer, is the invitation to see and be seen by one another. And this is how we build beloved community. When we gather and consider what it is that we are grateful for, let us also lift up gratitude for people who have courageously been transforming our world through resilience, through acts of bravery and love and witness. This last week, on November 20th, the world recognized Transgender Day of Remembrance, a day that commemorates transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming persons who are killed or targeted with violence and discrimination and abuse simply for living authentically who they are. In a statement released by the United States Secretary of State last week, a press release, it says, "The United States recognizes Transgender Day of Remembrance to affirm the dignity and human rights of transgender persons globally." And goes on to say, "It is our collective responsibility to ensure transgender persons can live full lives without fear of harm. The United States," Anthony Blinken writes, "is committed to fighting for a world that accepts and respects transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming persons. Until then, we proudly advocate to end transphobic discrimination, violence, and homicide." I think that's a moment of grace. There are a lot of batches of resilient soup that went into decades of community meals to make that press statement happen. The grace is in revealing the beauty of diversity of humanity in the myriad of ways that people show up for one another. Being open to our gender diverse siblings, we have always been among us. And allowing people to become visible and live out loud in all of their beauty is a testimony, an authenticity, and it is grace lived out loud. Let us make it easy to send and receive our love and our care and our hope and our dreams to one another by looking for, holding, and offering these moments of grace. When we gather around the table, what is on your Thanksgiving dinner menu? Do you have among your family, friends, or guests the ingredients that is called for in the recipe of resilience? A dash of courage, some tears of failure and doubt, trust, listening to one another, wonder, silence, laughter. Simmer it and serve it up in big dishes and save some for later. It may be challenging finding ways to offer and receive grace in the coming days and weeks as we find ourselves in conversations and interactions with family and friends and colleagues or neighbors whose views may significantly differ from our own. But they also present opportunities for growth, transformation, and deepening our understanding and practice of our shared UU values. This exercise, this spiritual practice at the heart of our faith, love. It summons us to honor the bonds that bind our lives one to another. So I confess I've been struggling to understand how to accept, how to honor the worth and dignity of those who are giving their full-throttled support to politics and policies that are so far away from what my faith calls me to. how I'm called to show up in the world. But when I pull back and give it a go, when I try to call up a bit of compassion, when I show the grace of a meaningful look and a smile and a connection, I wonder just what it might be like to be them, to be the other that I am othering. I find myself glimpsing people in a powerful grip of fear. And then I understand a little bit. The Australian poet and cartoonist Michael Lunick writes, "There are only two feelings, love and fear. There are only two languages, love and fear. There are only two activities, love and fear. There are only two motives, two procedures, two frameworks, two results, love and fear, love and fear." There is much that is frightening in our world today. Yet the task is to know what is worthy of our fear and what is not. And I wonder what would happen if our powers to discern the difference were better. Could we come to see more clearly how others are driven by love or fear? Might we better see and understand the same in ourselves? And might we be willing to go the added distance to consider how what we and others fear may ultimately be tied to love? We fear because something is at stake, something precious, something of great value, be it life or livelihood or the safety of one's family or the well-being of one's community. Love can very often be found on the flip side of fear. Maybe grace lies in the middle, waiting to be received, waiting to be given. When we grasp that fact, the landscape starts to shift. And when we see through their fear to the love they hold that may be at risk, we can better understand people's motives, including our own. Of course, knowing that doesn't explain or excuse everything, but it does have the potential to change a situation and open up other paths. When people are no longer afraid or are less afraid, when people see that you see them and you can smile and share a moment of grace, then the possibilities for healing and understanding and bridge building begin to emerge. This is the blessing that can come when we're able to move beyond fear, be it ours or another's. This is the grace of coming to the table and breaking bread. Whether in the choice between love and fear, may we always be resolved to choose love. Until we truly learn how to be led not by our fears, but by our faith in others, in ourselves, and in the life-giving power of love. We will find grace there. May it be so. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 349. We gather together. May we go forth from this place with grace and thanksgiving in our hearts, and may we choose to bless the world. May it be so.